Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
Loam Blood by Phoenix Alexander, with music by Fog Machine, read by the author.
"15 human arms protruded from the earth in a neat 4x4 grid, reaching up to the evening sky. From the tips of some of the fingers, thin viridian leaves unfurled shy bannerets. From others, pedicels pushed up from under translucent fingernails. In the cornermost spot of earth, a hole lay blackly open, soil making a palisade around its rim. This was no graveyard. Each limb, with its attendant, buried body, was healing. The Lethomancer looked down at his work, and then down the roll of the hill and the stone road that threaded itself into the horizon line. A bent figure was toiling its way towards him. The Lethomancer's breath caught. He watched as the man walked, noting the changed but recognizable stoop, the beloved height of him, the dancily way the weight of the man shifted from leg to leg. Something cold looped around his ankle and a greeting pushed, not unpleasantly, into his head. He looked down and grinned. "Good evening, Melis." He was grateful for the distraction of his companion. Melis had been there since he first moved to the hill. It was a secretive, strange creature who tolerated his presence and, over time, had become his friend. At first glance, it was a snake. On closer inspection, it had the face of a human, possessed of eely lips and little flared nostrils and cheekbones. A sphinx as a serpent instead of leonine. Why? The creature projected concepts that manifested as rudimentary words into the Lethomancer's mind and read his thoughts in turn. "I don't know why he's come," the Lethomancer answered out loud. "Honestly, I thought he'd have died." "Hoped?" The Lethomancer looked down into the narrow eyes of the creature. It relaxed the sheet muscle of its body and slid away from him, coiling into a small pile. "Maybe." The creature nodded. It had learned the gesture from the Lethomancer, and the Lethomancer was charmed by the kinship. This is how he had survived solitude. This is how he had forgotten, or tried to forget, the old man toiling up the hill, unbowed, whom he had run from, and his love, and the weight of it. Melis unfurled. "Welcome!" it projected boisterously, a psychic shout. Before the Lethomancer could stop it, Melis was winding down the hill, a fluid brushstroke of silver in the grass. The old man was breathless when he reached the Lethomancer's cottage and could not, at first, summon breath to speak. He stood leaning against the post, looking intensely at the Lethomancer, and his eyes said everything, too much and too loudly. "Hello, Aiv," the older man said finally, a shy smile accompanying the words, as if he were trying the name for the first time. "Hello, Iselda." Aiv could not meet his gaze. He felt emotion thicken in him, betrayed by the volatile tremor of his voice. "You don't look a day older than when I last saw you." Aiv had been 30 back then, and Iselda 60. Aiv pushed the image of their last meeting down, of him promising to talk more with Iselda in the morning, embracing in a firelit tavern bedchamber before leaving in the cold hours before dawn, unwilling to see his lover age and perish before he did. Melis recoiled behind him, burned by the memory it tasted. Aiv's eyes flicked from Iselda's face to the ground and then back again before, soundlessly, he hurried into his cottage and returned with a pitcher of water and a jug. Water plashed onto his smooth, tan skin as he poured a drink, the muscles of his forearms taut in unhappy contrast to the frailing limbs of his former lover. He held out the cup as if the old man were living fire. "It's been a hot day. You must be thirsty after your journey." "I am." Iselda took it and drank it in one quaff. Water mazed its way through his silver beard, his head thrown back exposed the skin of a neck that Aiv had kissed countless times. Iselda gasped, his eyes focused. He handed the cup back. "You do look well, love." "You too," Aiv replied quickly. "Would you like to come in and sit?" There was a desperate, pleasing simplicity that Aiv clung to now. Iselda was thirsty and needed water. Iselda was tired and needed to sit down. Aiv did not think about what he needed, or the thousand questions that sharpened needles in his chest. Iselda looked at the plot of upraised arms, the growing leaves from the fingers, the unbodied hole in the ground. "I'm not staying long. Well, not in that way," he replied. "I need something from you, if it's not a trouble. I'm here about your work." "Of course, anything. Yes. Come in first and let's talk." Aiv reached out. There was the distance, unpassed for years, and then the contact, fingers on cloth, and the limb beneath, and the body, and the person. It was still there, the love, all of it. They linked arms more firmly, they all but fell together. A moment, and it was good. The men walked slowly towards the cottage, the snake with the face of a man winding in their wake. You can't erase memories, that's the secret. They only fall dormant, sinking deeper with neglect, but they're always there. So I take them out. I give them a home with me, here. Aiv gestured to the plants rolling verdant arms from wooden shelves around the eaves of his living chamber. Plants stood spikily against wooden furniture and peeped little pointed hats and tumbled streamers of shoots around the Lethermancer's books and bottles. A fire burned in a pit in the center of the room. A glassy black cauldron stood on stumps over it, gingery liquid bubbling inside it. "You always did have a talent for magic. You wicked witch," Iselda laughed, rocking on a cushioned stool. "I've become a true spinster," Aiv agreed, chuckling. "You don't look quite old enough to be a spinster." The camaraderie vanished like a snuffed candle flame. "We don't really have to talk," Iselda said finally. "There's nothing to say." Melis gave a low hiss from the rafters. Lies tasted sour to the creature. Iselda gestured to the plants. "These are grown from the buried ones, then?" Aiv nodded, animated again, grateful for the focus. "Yes." "Every single plant here is a regret grown from your charges?" "Yes." "Why are they all different?" "Because people are." The men caught each other's eyes. "Aiv," Iselda said, quietly, looking around at the gently rustling leaves. They did not so much garland the cottage walls as smother them. "How have you been?" Aiv tried to make his face a mask, and did not speak until he trusted himself. Until he was in control. "Fine." Iselda nodded. "I understand." "Don't cry, Iz." The sight of his old lover weeping was intolerable. I know how worried you are all the times we were together, love. I forgave you for running." The words were accusation as much as benediction. "I return the question to you," Aiv said uncertainly. "How have you been?" Iselda stood, raw-eyed. "Let's not make this difficult. The truth is, I don't want to remember you." Yves felt as if he had been struck. That's not fair. It might not be, but that's how I feel. It's what I need to forget this, forget us, all of it. It was just romance. It was not. Don't disrespect it by saying that. It was not. I'm trying to help others, Yves cried. This is bigger than us. This is old magic. So why didn't you take me with you? Iselda said. I would have given up everything for you, to live unchanging. The magic keeps me from aging, Iselda. It's not just the hill. I would stay like this and you would have died. The harshness of his words stunned him, but it was too late, and it was true. You are afraid, is what you're saying. Iselda straightened. You pull the regrets of others from the ground and keep them around you, yet you were too afraid to stay with me. The liquid in the cauldron roiled and spat. We wouldn't have had many years together, Yves whispered. Iselda stood, turning his head away. I would have treasured every moment. The fire shivered. An evening wind sidled in through the window panes, teasing the plants, greenery trembling under the world's breath. Melis was absolute silence, flattened against a wooden beam above, its pupils dueling at the headiness of thought haloing out from these men. Come with me, Yves said when he felt like he could breathe again. What he wanted to say, and did not, was, I am sorry. Does it hurt? Asked Iselda. No, the Lethomancer said. It's just soil. He did not say it would hurt him. When the first shoot of regret left Iselda's body, unspooled from his nail bed, signalling the obliteration of his memory. Evening settled like a bird around them, the flushing sky feathered with clouds. Iselda looked down at the plot. The 15 buried, their arms upraised, reaching, greenery rearing up from their fingers into the ambering sunlight. They're almost healed. They are. What happens? Melis alerts me when they're ready. I take the plants from them and help them climb out, dress them, feed and water them, and send them on their way happier than when they came. Forgetting all the regrets they had? Every one. Yves made himself say the words. Iselda took a shuddering breath. And if I change my mind down there in the ground, can I... Iselda made an upward gesture with his hands, the fingers mimicking fluttering wings. Yves shook his head slowly. Iselda let his hands fall to his side. Then, suddenly, he seized Yves' hand and squeezed it. I'm ready, he said. He stood by the hole in the earth, the 16th spot. Journey's end. I never forgot you after you ran, Yves. I know. But I wanted to. I want to. What was there to say to that? Iselda brought a shaking hand up to his face and wept soundlessly. You will be held here, Yves said. But not by you. Turning, Iselda seemed to take in the plot, the rolling curve of the hill and the spires of the city in the valley below. But when he talked, he was still there, in his mind, and the sorrow, as he should be. How long do you think I'll need? This broke Yves' poise. How can you ask me to judge that? Because you know how much you mean to me, or... A horrible sadness transformed Iselda's face. Maybe you don't. The enchanted ground murmured, moaning for Iselda's regret. Iselda sighed. His eyelids dropped, and his head suddenly seemed too heavy for his neck, the prickly chin nodding towards his chest. He swayed on his feet. Gently, gently. Yves moved around the man swiftly, helping him undress. The body that he found beneath the cotton peasant's trousers and shirt was lean but healthy, good in the way that all bodies were good. Though older, Yves still recognized the familiar shapes and contours, the topography of pleasure that was his former lover. He eased the man to sit on the lip of the hole in the earth. Iselda's face relaxed, years seeming to slough from him. The soil feels good. Holding one of Iselda's wrists so his arm was raised above his head, Yves encouraged him to slide forward. The man dropped into the hole with a small cry. The earth moved, rising in a living tide to clasp his legs, his waist, his chest. It was a falling in of the loam around him, as if the earth had been waiting for this. Sleep well, love. I am with you. Iselda looked up, and in a terrible moment, like a star sliding from behind cloud, clarity shone in his eyes as he said, I wish I had met you earlier in life. Barely had the words left Iselda's lips when the soil tided forward into the hole, draping over the old man's shoulders and falling over his face, over the greyish-brown of his hair, covering that thin frame. Yves' last view was of another smile, subtle, the features arranging themselves into something that held multitudes. A honeyed light passed across it as the magic of the soil took hold, and then there was only soil. Seasons passed, and still Iselda stayed in the ground, his exposed arm resting on the earth. Yves busied himself with trips to the city, quick, efficient trips, since human mortality returned when he was beyond the magical parameters of the hill, and the other 15 in the soil eventually raised their hands and bloomed strange flowers, vines, succulents. Yves helped them out one by one and coaxed them back out into the world with blank, brilliant minds. There was a terrible comfort when Yves slept at night, knowing that Iselda was still out there, meters away underground, still with him. His sleep, though, was tormented by the thought of his memories of their love leaching out into the soil. He would wake up screaming in the dim hours of morning, with Melis curled on his chest, pale with the sickness of his dreams. And then, one morning, the arm raised up to the heavens. Iselda was ready. From his nail extended the thornless curved stem of a rose, the most beautiful rose Yves had ever seen. Yves carefully cut it from his old lover and placed it in a glass jar by his bedroom window, where it would bloom for the rest of his days. Then, gently, tenderly, he unburied Iselda from the soil, helping him shake the dirt from his body, and the man blinked up into the bright sunlight. Oh, hello, Iselda said. Who are you? Comfort radiated from Melis, a quicksilver streak in the grass. It was the only thing that kept Yves standing. A friend, he said. Oh, you look very nice. Handsome lad. Yves washed him in silence and returned him his clean clothes. Iselda stretched, smiled and saluted at Yves, the younger lover he would never remember, and struck out for the city. Yves watched him until he was just a small black silhouette on the stone path between hills, until he turned a corner, and until he was gone, obscured by ancient green earth. The wind blew kindly. The day would be a hot one. Yves looked down into the hole his lover had left. Melis reared before him, tense. He looked down at it for a long, long time. Melis, will you help me? Always. The Lethomancer stripped off his robes and sat on the lip of the soil, feeling its bristling coolness against his calves. He took one last look at the glory of the world, said a prayer to the gods for knowing such love, and slid in, raising his arm above him.
Surgery for Dummies by F.J. Bergmann, with music by Fog Machine. read by Jean-Paul Garnier. Despite lack of cooperation from healthcare personnel you approach, the solution is obvious. You have some medical training. Knowledge, anyway, in spite of the intrusive thoughts that keep interfering with your optimum functionality. Just because you had to withdraw, the dean's office staff was very understanding but kept giving you pamphlets about the university counseling services. Doesn't mean you didn't learn anything. You spent a lot of time in the medical college library, reading books that weren't required, but that met your needs. Anyway, it's a simple operation. You've collected all the necessary equipment. What you couldn't purchase yourself, one item at a time, each time from a different pharmacy or big box store, spread out over several months, came mostly from emergency room visits. You had actually begun to look forward to those interminable waits in private alcoves stocked with tools and pharmaceuticals. Before people came to rely so much on the medical profession, mainly in the last 50 years you'd think, they were more self-sufficient with regard to their own health. On the frontier, in isolated cabins, there were no doctors. It was either go ahead and do the appendectomy or cesarean section on your own, or watch a loved one die. In emergencies, individuals had been known to amputate their own limbs, cauterize their own infected wounds. Lots of them. Even prehistoric skulls show evidence of trepanning to release their personal demons. Who knows you better than yourself? And don't forget that farmers have always done plenty of successful minor surgeries on their livestock, without formal training or even a veterinarian. As long as care is taken with the septic procedure, it shouldn't be a problem at all. You wait until your roommate is gone for the weekend, camping with friends. You aren't a friend, but sometimes, if he hasn't seen you that day, he'll knock on the door and ask if you're okay in there. You always say, "Yes, Jeff, I'm okay in there." He thinks this is very funny. You decide to start Saturday morning. This will give you plenty of time to clean up, since Jeff won't be back until Sunday night. You've shaved and scrubbed and injected xylocaine, which you got at the dentist, where you were also left unattended for long stretches of time to numb the area. You are about to perform the first incision when you hear the door buzzer. Has someone found out what you're about to do? Are they spying on you somehow? You say, "Just a minute," into the intercom. Take off the clean hospital gown. Fortunately, you have extras. And pull your pants back on. The UPS man, with a package for Jeff that requires a signature. Jeff didn't tell you he was expecting a delivery. It could have ruined everything if you had been disturbed at the wrong moment. You are angry and, after the UPS man leaves, hurl the package into the dumpster behind the building. No one can read your handwriting anyway. You will tell Jeff that someone else must have forged your signature. You have to scrub all over again. And then you are sorry about throwing away Jeff's package because it's not his fault and it might be important to him. So you get dressed again and go out to climb into the dumpster to retrieve it. You have to stand on a discarded, cracked wastebasket to get over the edge. It doesn't occur to you until you have dropped down inside that you will need to stand on something to get out. If you stand on Jeff's package, you can heave yourself up, but then you will not have the package. You feel like you're about to burst into tears. You can't decide what to do. While you were deciding, someone throws in more garbage. A bag full of used cat litter, coffee grounds, and potato peels. They also throw in the broken wastebasket. You wait until they leave to climb back out. And then you have to take a shower before you can scrub a third time. Also, You're not sure if more local anesthetic would be a good idea now, or if you should wait. You don't have the accompanying literature, so you look up xylocaine. Lidocaine is the name of the actual drug, it says, in an old Merrick Index, where you learn nothing useful. You decide to wait. You can always inject more if it starts to hurt. You have set out a filled syringe and extra ampules, 2 scalpels, clamps, swabs, betadine, suture thread, needles, and latex surgical gloves. You are not allergic to latex or the betadine. Everything is ready, arranged conveniently on several layers of clean towels from Goodwill, which you will put in a garbage bag and throw in the dumpster. You will put the covers back on the needles first, so they do not stick anyone by accident. You can still change your mind. It's not too late. But you are more convinced than ever that this is what you need. You pick up a scalpel and lift folds of flesh out of the way. At the last minute, you decide that more xylocaine is a good idea after all. A droplet of the lidocaine solution quivers at the end of the thin needle. You hardly feel the first injection go in. When you delicately slice through the skin and the blood wells up, you don't feel anything at all. You could have practiced on animals, but you were too squeamish. The Humane Society probably wouldn't take back an animal with evidence of recent surgery without veterinary records and an explanation. When you tried to volunteer at the animal shelter, it turned out they didn't let unqualified persons do things like that there. But you had watched procedural videos, dogs, cats, livestock, online. There are even websites giving advice, medical, psychological, and legal, for people who want to do what you were doing, but for completely different reasons. Their motives seem peculiar and sad. What is inside your own body looks different from textbook and monitor images. In the flesh. The membrane enclosing each sac is silvery, shimmering, a veil parting beneath the blade. The seed containers slip out like soft eggs. There is so little adhesion, you don't even need the scalpel to free them. As they dangle from each tubule, you feel the lightest of tugs, as if the single string on an ancient musical instrument had been gently plucked. Twice. It echoes, vibrating soundlessly inside your pubic bone. You set down the scalpel carefully, even though you were done with it, and pick up the blunt-tipped surgical scissors. You snip midway up each vas deferens. You are confident that the contamination does not appear to have spread outside the seed pods themselves. You begin painstakingly suturing the incision with neat, minuscule stitches. It's like embroidery, really. When it's all finished, your muscles are cramping from staying bent over so long, and you are very tired, but you feel a deep sense of satisfaction. You acted in time. It's better for everyone this way. If it had gone on for much longer, you would have lost control completely, and who knows what would happen with them in charge of your life. You pick up your discarded testicles and drop them in the kitchen sink. The sink is stainless steel, so they should be safe there for the time being. Even though there was little blood loss, you feel a bit woozy. You need to clean up before Jeff gets back so he does not get upset like when you put Morty, the dead hamster of Louise from next door, in the freezer because you had promised to bury it for her after it died of old age, and she was so sad. Only the ground was frozen, so you were waiting for spring. You fold the absorbent pads and place them, with the wads of bloody gauze, and use cotton swabs in Ziploc baggies, which you put inside a black plastic trash bag. The betadine can go in the medicine cabinet, but the other leftover drugs and syringes and equipment you regretfully toss into a cardboard box and seal it with duct tape. You will put it all in the dumpster. The non-recycling dumpster, you remind yourself, tomorrow, before Jeff comes home. You drift in and out of focus as the garbage disposal grinds, snarls, and occasionally hiccups while the faucet runs. It may take a month or two for your testosterone levels to fall and stabilize, which will probably calm you down. If not, you may have to consider the influence of the adrenal glands. These are inconveniently located inside the abdominal cavity, behind the liver, but not logistically inaccessible. But the important thing is that the things lurking inside your scrotum were, thank goodness, removed in time. You had tried to discuss your condition with Jeff shortly after he moved in. You had long since given up discussing the matter with anyone else, but you felt that he should be aware of the risk, in case he was affected too. He had been very nice about agreeing to pay more rent for the larger bedroom. He looked very concerned when you described the visions and compulsions their infestation was inflicting upon you. But when you tried to pull down your shorts to show him the parasites visible just under the skin, he had retreated hastily. Dude, sorry, I don't swing that way, you know? And he left to spend the night at his girlfriend's apartment, while you were still muttering incoherently. You could have used his help today, but you don't seem to have a knack for explanations. And it's possible that he would rather be camping in any case. All the same, you are proud to have dealt with the alien spawn before they could hatch inside your body, take over your brain, and set about infecting the rest of the human race. The disposal quiets to a mumbling purr. You look down into the gleaming sink and sigh with relief, letting your fingers trail in the lukewarm, swirling water. Your hand is trembling a bit, and you feel cold. Time for some hot tea, and perhaps after that you will feel up to heating canned soup and making toast. Then the disposal noise stops abruptly before you can turn it off. The sink quivers as you lean on its cool edge. It takes you a moment to realize that the shudder you feel does not originate from your own body. Fine, translucent, twitching filaments laden with new spores are rising from the drain, growing and lengthening ever more rapidly. You scream as the questing tips lance into your wrist and forearm, even though you feel no pain. In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard Loam Blood by Phoenix Alexander, with music by Fog Machine, and Surgery for Dummies by F.J. Bergmann, with music by Fog Machine. Theme music by Dane Luscombe. Be sure to visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree, California, or visit us online at spacecowboybooks.com.